It is 26 minutes away from the top of the hour. Here's at hour number one of Brunch, 107.7 Music for Life. It's good to have you. I am Bishop, and my co-host is Sharmain Baboolal. A very familiar face has walked into our studio. Sharmain?
Well, good morning, Mark Lyndersay.
Morning, Sean.
Familiar face, familiar writing. Mark is a professional photographer, photojournalist, writer. Previously held the position as editorial operations manager at the Trinidad Guardian, was head of the publications and production at Pt.1. His specialties, according to his LinkedIn profile, executive portraiture, is that how you pronounce it?
Yes,
Good. Technology writing, he's the editor of Tech News TT, featuring technology reporting from Trinidad and Tobago. And the context, we've asked Mark to bring his expertise into play when social media became the focus this week with outrage over norowly.com. And not just the outrage, but young children were at home on vacation from school, this 2-month vacation, and they're just doing their normal checks on YouTube, and pops up norowly.com everywhere. But by now, we forced to widen the discussion this morning to a handling of what could have easily escalated into a national crisis because of fear-mongering via social media on Friday. So, Mark, it's all open. Help us understand what's going on with social media. And it's the first time that it's playing such a grave
Vital
role in politics. Yeah. Your mic down a bit?
Yeah. Okay, well, it's not actually the first time that social media has taken such a pivotal role in a national crisis. While the day of policing was not necessarily national in that it was sort of centered on the west of Port of Spain area, it was a kind of really clear example of what happens when social media gets hold of information in advance of official channels. The instinct, of course, is, and this will play out, I suspect, in discussions about what happened on Friday and since then, but it is the nature of social media to race ahead of traditional news because it's not restrained by checks and balances, a need to fact check. People post almost immediately, and information about what they posted tends to trail afterwards. But the instinct of officials to try to restrain social media is almost always exactly wrong, because it is the nature of the medium to spread information. That's what it was designed for. The internet was designed to exchange information quickly, and social media lubricated on top of that, making it extremely easy for anyone to post information like that. What official sources need to do is to start raising their game and to start engaging with that process as it happens, so that a lot of information was being passed along, but we weren't getting confirmation, rebutting information, amplifying information from any source that anyone could link to. That was also the case with the day of policing. A whole lot of information went out to people, but it wasn't until almost midday that the National Operations Center began circulating information. It might have been as early as 10:30, but by then the damage was done. If you were in the traffic, you were in the traffic.
But precisely your point is made that folks can can use the social media, get stuff out without any checking. The Budapest Convention was intended to talk about the crimes involved in computer and social media and internet use generally, but also to find a mechanism, at least to hear some mechanisms, to try to control how the world, the conventional world, respond to this new technology. What came out of that convention? What about the suggestions that came in there as to ways to, if possible, and I don't think it is, regulate the internet?
Oh dear. Regulating the internet is a discussion that crops up from time to time. It tends to falter in the face of the public that actually uses the internet. It tends to be focused interests who want to control aspects of the internet, and it tends to get derailed when it actually the rubber hits the road. It's hard to think about controlling information in an environment in which information can be so readily spread and shared. It is incumbent, I think, on traditional sources of information, media houses and so forth, as well as people who are responsible officially for disseminating that information, to, I suppose the best word would be to slip a noose around that information as it gets spread. To say, okay, this is out there, this is my immediate response to it. Further information can be found from this source. And to clarify ways that people can anchor their information as it comes to them from official response channels.
You're asking for a revolution. You're asking for groups to be set up to, essentially for business stakeholders, to set up a group to monitor what goes on there all the time. Because, you know, you throw something up there, you can pick up 2,000 tweets in a fraction of a second. And for a company or stakeholders to go in there and say, let us rebut this, let's put a noose, as you call it, around this, they must have people whose eyes are peeled on social media.
Yes.
So it's a different level of bureaucracy and cost you're talking about.
And those people exist in other nations, in other environments. And it's not so much asking for a revolution as asking for a response to a revolution. Because the revolution is already in progress. There's no way that we can roll that back without sort of draconian rights
suppression
restrictions and so on. I know of several media houses abroad who have social media directors. These are people whose job is to know what's going on, to be plugged into all the channels, to be able to respond, who are continuously monitoring or have teams that continuously monitor them. Now, what's happened is that businesses do have these services working for them, but they have these services working for them for things like advertising or for mentions.
Yes, monitoring.
So they have their media monitoring in place and so on. But that game as well has to be raised to understand that something can happen very quickly related to your brand. Something very quickly can happen related to the news. Something quickly can happen as pertains to national security.
Taking that to its natural conclusion, you're saying it is a priority for national security to get their act together technologically in the case of emergencies and quick response and stuff like that.
Let me say that I cannot understand how the National Operations Center is not on top of this. Because they've had too many instances where information went out well in advance of their capacity to respond.
Neither is the ODPM.
Well, the ODPM has its function, it has its channels, but it does not have an aggressive response. I mean, it has a capacity, as I imagined, as the National Operations Center, to send a text to every single person in Trinidad who has a cell phone.
Which did not happen from the National Operations Center on Friday when there was absolute fear-mongering on the streets everywhere.
Yes, and that capacity exists. It's a capacity that people can make, can build into their systems. Clearly, it's not something you want to abuse by sending people texts every day. So it means that when that text comes, people will pay attention to it because, wow, this I need to pay attention to this. The ODPM does send out texts from time to time when people are concerned about matters and so on arising in terms of natural disasters. I think what we need is a mechanism to deal with unnatural disasters.
Okay, so Bish opened it up by talking about the Budapest Convention. So I want to take us home here to our police. Police, I'm hearing them quoting a cybercrime unit, right? You're into the technology. So before we go into all the politics and how it's done, how does the police cybercrime unit operate? Do you know? And we have just one case of reference, which is the Sasha Mohammed case. Do you remember?
Yes, I remember the Sasha
Mohammed
case.
So can we speak about it and just enlighten our audience about that? Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, I cannot speak to the operations of the cybercrime unit. I've never interfaced with the folks. I imagine that they must have people of skill and talent operating there. I don't know that I can point to any instance in which the cybercrime unit has responded to something that could be described as a cybercrime in any kind of authoritative and timely manner.
Talk about character assassination. Where you have someone who X amount of complaints have been made against them as an abuser of Facebook and other media. Is there any way that the accumulated complaints is monitored, where something can be done against them. That is, I know you can use libel if you actually have them writing something directly, but for folks who don't have the time to follow through on that, are there any watchdogs, for instance, is what I'm asking about? And I'm going to extend that to the political sphere at the same time.
To the best of my knowledge, there's nobody who's watchdogging this situation. Every case that I know of that someone has sought to build a case against someone who is attacking them in this way has been built around screenshots, around printouts of documentation, and presented to traditional authorities as a case of assault. No, there isn't anyone that I know of who's monitoring this, though there are official sources that you can go to and say, okay, this is happening to me. What can you do about it, and how do I proceed from here?
And Sharmain, if you forgive me, the reason I got into that area is because of what you said, which we all know to be fact. There is no way you can control all the outlets of the information. There is no way you can control what is factual, what is satire, what is malicious, or what is just baseless opinion. You cannot do that. And I'm wondering if it is time for all of us to invest into an effective watchdog group, or is it the role of government to say, let us put a watchdog group here to watch what goes on, and with accumulated number of complaints against a person with clearly malicious intents of somebody, that something is done, as against leaving it up to individuals to do this. You cannot stop it, but I'm asking if there is some way we can put parameters by, a shot across the bow is normally enough. So you get a watchdog group that's watching a situation, you pull one or two people, drop them as examples, and hopefully that will assist you in narrowing the path, as it were.
What's more likely to happen is what has happened abroad in situations like that. There are dedicated offices in police departments abroad, for instance, where you can say, this is happening to me, and they say, okay, we will take over from here and monitor it.
Gotcha.
And they go about the process of gathering it. In some cases, they pose as the person in order to make the thing more inflammatory and to gather more information about the person who is engaged in the assault, and then they act on it. But to say that somebody would be monitoring the entire internet and all of Facebook looking for instances of something like that happening, it's unwieldy.
I know, and that's why I said, where complaints are made. Yeah. I understand. No watchdog group can just stay there and pull all these things. They'll be doing that forever and never be able to follow through on anything.
But having the capacity to act on a report like that, to be able to say, okay, fine, this is happening to you, we know what to do from here. I don't know that we have that capacity in Trinidad and Tobago, and it's something that's worth investigating and investing in, I think.
We I'm glad that you made reference to, because you made me think that, for example, the police, the ODPM, and the National Operations Center were not outside of text, because we monitor their Facebook pages for news purposes. And they were not on the ball on Friday, as they ought to have been. So is it that everywhere there's a corporate communications department or corporate communications director, as it was in the old school, where you have this heavy laden with people area who are supposed to disseminate information? They're accustomed to writing press releases and sending it out once or twice a day, but are not yet in tune with working like that, getting information with the speed of social media. And is that what we're suffering, that we have not yet, it's the horse is bolted, that the people and the human resources we have behind it are not really...
Well, I can't talk to the capacities of the National Operations Center or the ODPM, but on the evidence of what has happened, I am inclined to believe that even if they have those people in place, they do not have a mechanism by which those people can bypass the many steps that kind of information would normally go through. To say, I need to call this person and get the permission to release this tweet, to release this Facebook message, to say this very quickly because we need to say it right now. So I can't talk to capacity, but I can infer from what is happening and what we have seen happening that there is a failure of process.
Yeah, because that old archaic system of time has always been, you're moving, but social media moves at a mad pace.
Well, disaster preparedness is not only mattresses and sandbags. It is communication. And the communication process has to be operating well in advance of those things. So that if people are watching water rising outside their homes, they should be in a position to say, I just got a message, the people are on their way, they'll be here in an hour. That is reassuring. That is sending information that puts people in a position to say, okay, we know that what we're dealing with. So I would think that what probably needs to happen going forward is that we need to acknowledge there is a problem and a failing, and we need to operate in a way that ensures that those gaps are closed so that people can, if not get ahead of the pace at which information is being disseminated, they can keep pace with it as it is being shared.
Within the Trinidad context, that is almost as unrealistic as you said to me before, because, I mean, I look at a simple case of getting the coordination clearly from our discussion with our previous guests and from what we have seen between agencies is not there. I mean, you don't even have it within one agency. I remember the police commissioner the Friday before the Army and police group moved into Chaguanas said that we can handle this on the Friday night and the Saturday morning. The Army and the police were in Chaguanas. So they're not even getting their own act together. And being able to step up to this challenge is going to be a different job. The cybercrime bill that was passed, you saw that addressing any of these concerns that we are talking about here?
There are provisions for it. There are issues with some aspects of it that still need to be addressed in terms of how that wording plays out in terms of actual legislation, in terms of actual regulations. Of course, some of those things affect the media as well. And the problem with the length of time that the bill has taken is that the nature of communication and the speed at which it is evolving is not waiting on the bill. So the bill at this time is dealing with communications as it was understood when it was drafted and when the amendments were made. And at this point, there are other things that are arising that may probably need to be dealt with as well.
And that is why I thought they would have left out the part that deals with the media. You being a member of the media know exactly why our objection was there. I thought they would leave that out and move forward with the bill. Instead, they seem to lump everything together and say, we're going to look at this, and while we look at this, everything else is going to wait.
Well, that's politics. And there's a certain haste to say that we have pressed this into action and so on, and we have kept our promise to do this. So those are things that happen.
Well, can we throw the spotlight internally on media? You would have been monitoring what happened on Friday particularly. Yassin Abubakar, no less, was the person who, out of everyone, said, let's not create a chaotic climate.
Yes.
And he directed that to the media. Keith Clement, I'm going to call you out this morning, my colleague at The Guardian. Keith, when I was heading up to Tunapuna on Friday afternoon, he was posting as news, on his page. His credibility as a journalist, even I am his colleague, so I would take the information very seriously about the shootings that were being reported at various police stations throughout the country. We've had instances in the past where, I wouldn't call names again, CNC3, for example, they tweeted information and then it was the Prime Minister who was resigning, who was fired and all of that. So we had that haste to get news out. We are we prepared as local media, conventional media, because they have had to rely very heavily, they have had to make that push towards social media. C News, everybody. It's stronger because you get it on Facebook faster than you can pull up the cameras and get the lights on and go on television. So are we ready for that in terms of you looking at the whole media landscape? Are we ready to handling it well?
Okay, let me preface all this by saying that I have not worked in a newsroom, though I have worked for a newspaper for the last 10 years. Well, actually, it's almost 15 years now. So while I contribute to the newspaper, I'm not actually in the newsroom. So I cannot speak with authority about what happens even in my own newspaper. But I can say that for a very long time, I thought we were missing the boat by not engaging individual members of the newsroom in the social media process. We created social media departments and internet departments that were responsible for that sort of thing and posting things. But every single person in the newsroom was also posting things. For a long time, that was, of course, severely limited during working hours because things like Facebook and Twitter were blocked
from the server level.
From the server level, so you couldn't access it on your computer. But then once 4G came out and everybody had a smartphone, that just evaporated. Everybody could post from their desk because they could just pull out their phone and post what they were thinking about. That means that if you can't stop people from posting or institutionalize it from a level saying that every single thing that you post related to news is related to our organizer, which is, of course, heading down the direction of restrictions.
Censorship. Yeah.
Well, that's not got all the way to censorship. Let's just say corporate restrictions. We don't want you doing this for these reasons. Instead of embracing it as a possibility and saying, okay, every single person in this newsroom is a reporter. Therefore, you need to be trained and engaged in how you use all media, not just our media. So that when you present information, you present it with a reasonable degree of authority and comfort, knowing that whatever you have done as a result of our training, we can comfortably say we back you on that because we are behind you and we have coached you in this, and we expect that you will align with the principles that the media house is espousing. So that when a person tweets during working hours or when a person makes a post during working hours to Facebook, there is the expectation of the public, though it is not necessarily a reasonable expectation, that that person is posting in an official rather than a private capacity.